I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There's no CBA deal. The players don't want to agree to what the owners are proposing.
This isn't just a spicy take for attention anymore, and it's not some throwaway debate for comment sections either. With the WNBA and the players stuck in a deadlock, people are starting to float a proposal that sounds outrageous on purpose. Blow it up and start over.
Grab Asia Wilson, grab Sabrina, grab Sophie, grab the superstar, the main attraction, Caitlin Clark.
The idea getting tossed around is basically grab Caitlin Clark, grab Sabrina Ionescu, grab Sophie Cunningham, and rebuild the whole thing from scratch. Some voices online even claim nobody would notice the difference in talent, which is a wild thing to say out loud, but it shows how heated this has gotten. And here's the scary part. A chunk of fans say they'd actually welcome a reset.
In comes Caitlin Clark. Finally, they get noticed. They've tried so long to get paid what they think that they're owed.
In their minds, a fresh start means fewer constant complaints, fewer messy headlines, and a league that spotlights the players they feel move the game forward. That doesn't make the idea smart, fair, or realistic, but it does show how much frustration is boiling over. This isn't hyperbole anymore. It's a plan gaining traction in certain corners, and even hearing it said confidently should tell you how shaky the situation feels right now. The WNBA is in a genuine crisis moment. The collective bargaining agreement expired, and instead of a clean transition, the league ended up in postponements that froze major business operations. Free agency is on ice, contract negotiations are stuck, and teams are basically sitting there with their hands tied while the clock keeps moving.
But the players believe that they're entitled to more money. The old guard fans have brainwashed them into thinking that they are entitled.
This is not a normal off-season delay. This is the kind of gridlock that starts raising the ugly question, what if there's no season? Or what if the season is rushed and sloppy because the groundwork never got laid? The tension isn't happening because people are bored. It's happening because the core issue is huge. Revenue sharing.
Is it really bitter on the owner side? Probably not. They think they're going above and beyond with some of the things that they're willing to give.
Ownership has reportedly discussed boosting the players' share from a low single-digit baseline into something like the mid-teens, with numbers like 15% being thrown around, while the players' side is pushing hard for something closer to 30% before certain expenses are deducted. That's not a small gap. That's a canyon.
They would love it if WNBA folds. Unrivaled gets some players. Maybe that league turns to 5-on-5. They already see a future for Unrivaled.
Over the life of a long-term deal, that difference isn't a few million. It can swing into massive totals that change how teams operate, how rosters are built, and how stable the league looks to sponsors and media partners. To understand why this fight is so intense, you have to look at what the league has been for most of its existence.
Just start fresh. Call up Caitlin Clark and say, hey, Cece, we're moving on.
For years, the WNBA wasn't a money printing machine. Attendance was often modest, TV numbers were inconsistent, and sponsorships were nowhere near what they are now. A lot of teams survived because NBA ownership groups helped keep things afloat, treating the league like a long-term investment and a brand-building play rather than a short-term profit engine.
You want to play in the WNBA? You could be our first player. Call Sophie. Hey, Sophie, you want to come play in the WNBA? You'll be our first player.
That support mattered, but it also shaped how owners think. They remember the years when the WNBA needed help just to stay steady, and they don't want to promise numbers that feel impossible to sustain.
This league it's losing steam by the day.
Then 2024 hit like a thunderclap, and everything changed fast.
If interest levels were here when Caitlin Clark got here, dude, they're here. They might even be off the screen now.
The arrival of new star energy, led by Caitlin Clark, shifted the league's visibility overnight. Suddenly, games that used to feel local became national conversation. The Fever's crowds, the road crowds, the TV buzz, the social media attention, the non-stop debate. Women's basketball was everywhere. And when you get a surge like that, everyone starts fighting over the same thing: how to split the rewards and who gets credit for the boom. Caitlin Clark didn't just bring fans. She brought a new audience that wasn't watching before. Reports and public ratings talk have pointed to record-setting viewership spikes. and major networks paying closer attention.
No one cared about the playoffs. No one cared about the finals. Oh, but the ratings. Yeah, but the ratings were inflated.
Sponsors that had previously treated the WNBA like an afterthought suddenly saw value and urgency. Big brands leaned in, and you could feel the commercial temperature rising. That's where the money conversation gets real. Because once brands show up, the league stops being a nice story and becomes a business opportunity that people want a slice of.
You look at Caitlin Clark games, you look at Indiana Fever games, and you look at non-Caitlin Clark games. There it is. Said it. Right there.
Owners look at that and say, okay, we see the growth. We're willing to move. Players look at that and say, move faster and move bigger. That's the collision. On the ownership side, there have been discussions framed around huge upgrades, max deals jumping dramatically, average salaries rising into life-changing territory, minimums moving up, better travel, better hotels, better benefits, and stronger working conditions across the board. Compared to the past, those offers look like a different universe, and some fans hear those numbers and assume players should instantly say yes.
This league has lost momentum, and it's all because of the players. Unwillingness to negotiate. Unwillingness to compromise.
But the players' side has a different argument, and it's not hard to follow. They say the league markets the athletes as the product, so when the product grows, the players' share should rise in a way that reflects that reality. They also point out that the recent boom didn't happen in a vacuum. It's connected to years of groundwork, talent development, and the league slowly building credibility. In their view, a league can't finally pop off and then keep the player split feeling stuck in an older era. Their stance is basically, if the pie is getting bigger, the slice needs to grow too, and it shouldn't only reward a handful of top earners. That's why comparisons to other leagues get dragged into this. Players look at models like the NBA structure and other modern women's leagues where revenue-sharing concepts can climb higher, and they ask why they should settle for something like 15% if the sport is truly leveling up. It's not just about envy, it's about precedent and dignity. They're saying, if you want us to treat this like a major league, then pay and share like it's a major league. Owners counter with the messy reality of costs. They'll argue that revenue isn't the same thing as profit, and expenses are real. Arena deals, staffing, travel upgrades, marketing pushes, expansion infrastructure, and the investment it takes to keep growth alive. They'll say a 30% share before certain costs could hit teams hard, especially franchises that don't have instant star-driven sellouts every night. In that framing, the owners aren't trying to be villains. They're trying to avoid building a financial structure that collapses under pressure. And whether fans like it or not, that argument lands with some people because stability matters for everyone. But here's where the negotiations get extra toxic. It's not just numbers anymore, it's feelings and trust. Some critics accuse certain players of acting entitled, while others accuse ownership of trying to cash in on a new wave of attention without properly rewarding the labor that makes the league possible. That back and forth turns negotiations personal fast, because once people feel disrespected, they stop hearing compromise. And when both sides start assuming the other side is negotiating in bad faith, even basic progress becomes hard. The leadership dynamic adds another layer too. The Players Association has visible leaders, and they've been vocal publicly, which keeps fans engaged but also raises the temperature. On top of that, the existence of alternative ventures like new formats and side leagues adds suspicion whether it's fair or not. For example, Brianna Stewart's connection to Unrivaled, a newer 3-on-3 league concept that's been talked about as offering strong pay for a shorter run, creates noise in the background. Even if everyone is acting honestly, the optics get messy because owners might wonder who is pushing for what and why. To be clear, there's a big difference between conflict of interest concerns and proof of wrongdoing, and people mix those up on purpose when they want drama. But in negotiations, perception is powerful. If owners think some union voices have incentives outside the WNBA ecosystem, that can breed mistrust. If players think owners are dragging their feet to protect control, that also breeds mistrust. And when mistrust gets baked in, every proposal feels like a trap, even when it's not. Meanwhile, the postponement is doing real damage on the ground. Free agency windows that normally help teams plan are frozen. Qualifying offers can't move the way they typically do. Players who expected to negotiate, relocate, or lock in security are stuck waiting. That limbo is brutal, especially for players who aren't living off endorsement money and don't have a massive cushion. It's easy for fans to focus on superstars, but the bulk of the league is made up of players who need stability and clear timelines to plan their lives. And the timing is nasty. Training camps aren't infinitely flexible, and the season calendar doesn't stop just because talks are tense. If there isn't a deal by mid-March, roster building becomes a scramble. If negotiations drag toward April, the whole season timeline starts looking shaky. That doesn't just threaten the first tip-off date. It threatens the quality of the product, because rushed preparation leads to sloppy basketball, more injuries, and less chemistry. You can't sell the biggest era ever while running the league like a last-minute group project. Now layer in the fear that interest is fragile, and you see why people are panicking. A lot of the new audience is star-driven. When certain names play, the attention spikes. When they don't, attention can dip. That isn't an insult to the league. It's just how modern sports attention works when a new wave arrives through a superstar gateway. The risk is obvious. If the league goes dark because of a work stoppage, casual fans might not wait around. They'll move on, and the league will have to fight to get them back. That's why the nuclear option talk starts creeping in, even if it sounds gross. Replacement players are the extreme scenario people mention when labor negotiations collapse. The legal frameworks in sports history show that management can sometimes declare an impasse and attempt to operate under their last best offer, and some leagues have tried substitute labor in the past. That doesn't mean it's easy, smart, or ethical, but it does mean it's a card that exists in the deck, and just the threat of it can change how negotiations feel. So when people online say, what if the league signs a few headliners to massive deals and fills the rest with replacements? They're not describing something clean or guaranteed. They're describing an aggressive leverage fantasy that would create chaos. It would also likely trigger lawsuits, labor complaints, sponsor anger, and non-stop bad press. But the cold calculation behind the fantasy is this: if casual fans only show up for a small set of stars, would they care enough about the rest of the roster quality to punish the league for it? The honest answer is that fans would notice a difference in talent. High-level pro basketball doesn't grow on trees, and chemistry is real. But the scary part is that some executives might believe the drop-off is survivable in the short term if the main stars still appear, because star power drives headlines. That's not a flattering view of the sport, but it's a view people in business sometimes take when they're thinking in quarterly numbers instead of long-term culture. And even if the league never intends to do it, the threat alone can be used as pressure. If ownership can credibly signal, we will not accept a 30% model, and the union believes the owners might push the situation to the edge, it changes the dynamic. It forces the conversation away from moral arguments and into survival math. That's when unions get tested, because the membership isn't one unified financial bracket. A small group of stars have options and leverage. A larger group of role players need the league to function because it's their primary platform and paycheck. That uneven leverage is the uncomfortable truth nobody likes saying loudly. A handful of players drive a huge portion of attention at any given moment, especially in an era where new fans attach to specific names first. If you're a top-tier superstar with endorsements and global visibility, you can potentially find money elsewhere. If you're a rotation player trying to secure your next deal, missing a season isn't a headline, it's a personal crisis. That reality doesn't mean role players matter less as athletes or as humans. It just means the economics of fame are uneven, and negotiations are being shaped by that imbalance. So when the Players Association negotiates like it has equal leverage across the board, ownership may decide the union is overplaying its hand. Owners might think, if we wait long enough, the financial pressure splits the group. That's harsh, but it's a strategy we've seen in labor disputes across industries. It's also why unity matters so much for players, because if the group fractures, leverage evaporates fast. This is where the blow it up and start fresh talk becomes a symptom, not a solution. It's people reacting to fear and uncertainty by fantasizing about a clean reset. They imagine a league built around a few bankable stars, marketed like a modern entertainment product, with fewer internal conflicts and less baggage. But that vision ignores reality. The league is a system, not a simple content channel. You can't just copy-paste a handful of stars into a brand new structure and pretend the rest doesn't matter. Contracts, rights, sponsors, broadcast deals, and player development pipelines don't magically reset just because the internet is mad. So who blinks first in the real world? That's the question hanging over everything. Do players accept a deal closer to ownership's model to lock in major raises, better benefits, and stronger conditions now? Or do they hold the line for a bigger revenue share, betting that the league's growth is strong enough to force owners into a larger split? And on the other side, do owners take the short-term hit to keep momentum alive? Or do they gamble that players will fold under pressure? Because every week without resolution risks losing casual fans and making sponsors nervous. The league finally got mainstream attention, and now it's risking that attention by looking unstable right at the moment it should look unstoppable. At this point, it's not just about salary figures and percentages. It's about whether the WNBA can hold on to the moment it fought so hard to reach. With no CBA, no free agency movement, and no clear path, the league that finally broke through to mainstream America is now staring at the possibility of breaking itself from the inside out.